McKinley was born on January 29, 1843, in Niles, Ohio. As a young man, he briefly attended Allegheny College, before taking a post as a country school teacher. When the Civil War broke out in 1861, McKinley enlisted in the Union Army. He eventually earned the rank of Brevet Major of Volunteers. Returning to Ohio after the war, McKinley studied law, opened his own practice in Canton, Ohio, and married Ida Saxton, the daughter of a local banker. After the deaths, in quick succession, of her mother and her two young daughters early in their marriage, Ida's health rapidly deteriorated, and she spent the rest of her life as a chronic invalid. McKinley patiently catered to his wife throughout his burgeoning political career, winning praise from the public for his loving devotion to her. McKinley entered Ohio politics in 1869, and rose through the ranks as a Republican, winning election to the U.S. Congress in 1876. Over nearly 14 years in Congress, he served as chair of the House Ways and Means Committee and became known as a proponent of economic protectionism, in the form of high tariffs on imported goods. After the so-called Panic of 1893 led to a crippling economic depression in the United States, McKinley and his fellow Republicans regained the political advantage over the Democrats. McKinley won the Republican presidential nomination in 1896, thanks to his congressional and gubernatorial experience. Touted by Hanna as the advance agent of prosperity, and the protector of America's financial interests in contrast to Bryan's radical policies, McKinley won the popular vote by a margin of some 600,000, the largest victory in 25 years. He also won more than a third more electoral votes than Bryan. It was foreign affairs that would determine McKinley's presidential legacy, beginning with an ongoing conflict in Cuba, where Spanish forces were attempting to repress a revolutionary movement. Though the American press and public were outraged by the bloodshed, McKinley hoped to avoid intervention and pressed Spain to make concessions. After the sinking of the U.S. battleship Maine in Havana's harbor in February 1898, was linked, erroneously, as was later discovered, to an external explosion presumed to be a Spanish mine, McKinley asked Congress for the authority to intervene in the conflict. A formal declaration of war came on April 25. From early May to mid-August, U.S. forces defeated Spain near Santiago Harbor in Cuba. The Treaty of Paris, signed in December 1898 and narrowly ratified by Congress the following February, officially ended the Spanish-American War. In it, Spain ceded Puerto Rico, Guam and the Philippines to the United States, and Cuba gained its independence. While opponents of the treaty derided it as imperialist, McKinley took his cue from the majority of Americans who supported it, sending troops to quell a nationalist insurgency that broke out in the Philippines shortly after the war ended. McKinley's administration also pursued an influential open door policy aimed at supporting American commercial interests in China and ensuring a strong U.S. position in world markets. In 1900, McKinley backed up this policy by sending American troops to help put down the Boxer Rebellion, a nationalist uprising against foreign intervention in China. In 1900, McKinley again faced William Jennings Bryan, who ran on an anti-imperialism platform, and was re-elected with a greater margin of victory than he obtained 4 years earlier. The outcome reflected the American public's satisfaction with the outcome of the Spanish-American War and the country's economic prosperity. The following day, McKinley was standing in a receiving line at the exposition, when an unemployed Detroit mill worker, named Leon Czolgosz shot him twice in the chest at point-blank range. Rushed to a Buffalo hospital, McKinley initially received a hopeful prognosis. But gangrene set in around his wounds and he died 8 days later. Vice President Theodore Roosevelt succeeded him.